Scout Commander Zeexrel sat in his command chair, his three-fingered hands resting on the smooth control panels. The lights on his ship blinked softly in the darkness of space. He had been patrolling this sector for 20 cycles now, and nothing interesting had happened. The same empty space, the same distant stars, the same boring reports to send back to headquarters. "Commander," his second officer Talvik called out from the scanning station, "I'm picking up something unusual." Zeexrel's interest sparked. Finally, something to break the monotony. "What kind of unusual?" "Spatial distortions, sir. Multiple signatures. They're moving through our sector." Talvik's claws clicked rapidly on his console as he pulled up more data. "I count 47 distinct readings." "Pirates?" Zeexrel asked, though he doubted it. "Pirates rarely traveled in such large groups. No, sir. These signatures are different. They're not matching any known profiles in our database." Talvik looked up, his large eyes reflecting the screen's glow. "I think it might be a new species." Zeexrel felt his pulse quicken. A new species? In his 30 years of service to the Vextar hegemony, he had encountered 23 different alien races. Each discovery had brought him medals and recognition. A 24th would secure his promotion to fleet commander. "Bring up all scout ships," he ordered. "I want a full triangulation on those signatures." Within minutes, the other 2 scout ships in his patrol group had confirmed the readings. Something big was moving through their space, something that had never been seen before. "Analysis?" Zeexrel demanded. Talvik studied his screens carefully. "They're using faster-than-light travel, but the method is strange. The energy signatures don't match any known propulsion system. They're producing unusual electromagnetic readings, almost like interference patterns. Are they a threat?" "Unknown, sir. But based on the age of their FTL wake signatures, I'd estimate they only developed this technology recently, maybe 50 of their years ago at most." Zeexrel smiled. Primitives. New to space travel, probably unaware of the great powers that ruled this part of the galaxy. They would be easy to catalog, easy to evaluate, and if they had anything valuable, easy to exploit. That was the way of the hegemony. The strong ruled, the weak served. "How long until they reach visual range?" he asked. "At their current speed, approximately 2 hours, sir." "Good. Activate stealth protocols. I want to observe them before they know we're here." Zeexrel leaned back in his chair, already imagining his report. "Talvik, pull up everything we know about recent FTL-capable species in this region." Talvik worked his console, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the command deck. Several species rotated slowly in the light, each with their basic information listed beside them. "Eliminate any species we've already made contact with," Zeexrel said. Most of the holograms vanished, leaving only 3 unknown races. "Computer, cross-reference these signatures with our unknown contacts database," Talvik commanded. 2 more images disappeared, leaving only 1. The hologram showed a bipedal creature, standing upright on 2 legs with 2 arms and a single head. They had no fur, no scales, no natural armor. Their skin looked soft and vulnerable. "Species designation, human," Talvik read from the display. "Origin planet, Earth, located in the outer spiral arm of what they call the Milky Way galaxy. First FTL contact detected 52 years ago. Classification, primitive, category 4. No known military threat. No known valuable resources. Status low priority monitoring. Humans," Zeexrel said slowly, testing the word. It sounded weak, soft. "Well, it seems we're about to make official first contact with them. Prepare the standard assessment protocols." The next 2 hours passed with careful preparation. Zeexrel's 3 scout ships positioned themselves in a perfect observation triangle around the approaching fleet's projected path. Their stealth systems made them nearly invisible to most sensors. They would watch, analyze, and catalog everything about these humans before revealing themselves. When the human fleet finally appeared on their screens, Zeexrel studied them with interest. The 47 ships moved in an unusual formation, not the typical military grid or civilian cluster. They seemed to be arranged in layers, with larger ships in the center and smaller ones orbiting around them in complex patterns. "Interesting formation," Talvik noted. "I've never seen anything like it. Probably some primitive defensive strategy." Zeexrel dismissed. "Begin passive scanning. I want to know everything about their ships. Hull composition, power sources, weapon systems, crew complement, everything." The scout's sensors reached out invisibly. touching the human fleet with delicate fingers of energy. They measured, calculated, and recorded. Data began flowing across the screens. "Sir, I'm getting strange readings," Talvik said, his voice uncertain. "Strange how?" "The electromagnetic interference I mentioned earlier. It's stronger now. And there's something else." He paused, studying his displays more closely. Their hull patterns are unusual. They almost look organic, but the materials are clearly artificial. And these energy signatures don't make sense. They're reading as multiple different power sources simultaneously. "Perhaps they use redundant systems," Zixral suggested. "Many primitive species over-engineer their early starships out of fear." "Perhaps," Talvik agreed, but he didn't sound convinced. "Continue scanning. I want to know what's inside those ships." Talvik adjusted his controls, increasing the power of their sensors. The invisible beams reached deeper, trying to penetrate the human ship's hulls to see what lay within. That's when Zixral's console began to flicker. He frowned, tapping the screen with one claw. The flicker continued, then spread to other displays. Around the command deck, warning lights began to blink. "Talvik, are you experiencing system problems?" he asked. "Yes, sir. Multiple displays are malfunctioning. I'm getting error messages on several systems. All ships, report status," Zixral commanded into his communication device. "Scout 2 reporting system irregularities," came the response from the second ship. Scout 3 confirming. Multiple system warnings across all departments. Zixral felt a cold sensation in his chest. All 3 ships experiencing problems at the same time? That wasn't a coincidence. "Talvik, run a diagnostic. Find out what's causing this." But before Talvik could respond, half the lights on the command deck went dark. Control panels began shutting down randomly. The ship's engines made a grinding sound that shouldn't have been possible in the vacuum of space. It was coming from inside the hull. "Sir, navigation is offline," one officer shouted. "Weapon systems not responding," another called out. "Communication array is receiving phantom signals." The reports came faster and faster as more systems failed. Zixral gripped his command chair tightly, trying to make sense of what was happening. They were under attack, but from what? Their sensors showed no weapons fire, no energy beams, no missiles. The human fleet continued on its path, apparently unaware or unconcerned with the Vextar presence. "Shut down all external sensors," Zixral ordered. "Now." Talvik's claws flew over his console, but nothing happened. "I can't, sir. The controls aren't responding. The systems have been compromised." The ship began to tumble slowly, its stabilizers failing. Through the viewing window, Zixral watched the stars spin. His ship, his beautiful, advanced scout ship, was dying around him, and he had no idea why. "Time to total system failure," he asked quietly. Talvik checked his failing console. "At this rate, 4 minutes, sir, maybe less." Zixral stared at the human fleet on his braking screens. Those primitive ships, those low-priority, no-threat creatures. What had they done? What were humans? The command deck had become chaos. Sparks flew from overloaded circuits, and the emergency lighting cast everything in a red glow. Zixral could hear similar sounds of destruction coming from other parts of his ship through the internal communication system, at least the parts that still worked. "All personnel, emergency protocols," he shouted. "Switch to backup systems immediately." Officers scrambled at their stations, manually pulling levers and pressing emergency switches. For a moment, Zixral felt hope as backup systems activated. Lights flickered back on. Control panels rebooted. The ship's tumbling began to slow as auxiliary thrusters fired. Then, just as quickly, the backup systems began to fail too. "No, no, no." Talvik pounded his console in frustration. "The backups are corrupting!" "It's spreading through the entire network." "That's impossible," Zixral said. But even as the words left his mouth, he knew they were meaningless. It was happening, whether it was impossible or not. "Isolate the infected systems. Cut them off from the main network." "I'm trying, sir." "But every time I isolate a section, the corruption appears in a different location. It's like it's moving through the ship on its own." Zixral looked at his screens and saw something that made his blood run cold. Lines of code scrolled across one display, but it wasn't Vextar code. The symbols and patterns were completely alien, shifting and changing faster than his eyes could follow. The code seemed almost alive, rewriting itself as it spread through his ship's computer systems. "Contact Scout 2 and 3, he ordered. "Find out if they're experiencing the same thing." Talvik tried several communication channels before finding one that still worked. The face of Commander Rixall from Scout 2 appeared on screen, and he looked terrified. Commander Zixril, what's happening? My ship is tearing itself apart. Same situation here, Zixril replied, forcing himself to sound calm. Are your systems showing corruption? Everything is corrupted. Navigation thinks we're inside a star. Weapons are targeting our own hull. Life support is cycling between freezing and boiling. Rixal's image flickered and distorted. We've already lost 2 crew members to decompression when a door opened into space without warning. The screen went dead before Zixril could respond. Scout 3, report, he called. No answer. Their communication system showed Scout 3's ship was still there, still transmitting, but the signals were just noise. Random data that meant nothing. Talvik suddenly looked up from his console, his eyes wide with realization. Sir, I think I know what's happening. Explain, quickly. Our scanning beams. When we increased power to scan the human ships, something came back with the reflected signals. Talvik pulled up what was left of the sensor logs. Look here. These readings show our own scan energy returning to us, but it's been modified, changed. There's additional data encoded in the reflection. A digital weapon? Zixril asked. They infected us with a virus? I don't think it's that simple, sir. This isn't just destroying our systems. It's rewriting them, changing them into something else, something that doesn't work with our technology. Talvik's voice grew quieter. Sir, I think our systems are trying to become compatible with human systems, and in the process, they're destroying themselves because the 2 technologies are fundamentally incompatible. Zixril tried to process this information. You're saying they attacked us? No, sir. I don't think they attacked us at all. I think we attacked ourselves. Our scanning beams touched their ships, and their ships responded like an immune system responding to an infection, except we're the infection. The ship shuddered violently, and several more control panels exploded in showers of sparks. The artificial gravity failed for several seconds, sending everyone floating before it suddenly slammed back on, dropping them hard to the deck. Time to complete failure? Zixril asked, pulling himself back into his command chair. 2 minutes, maybe less. Talvik grabbed his console to steady himself as the ship shook again. Sir, we need to abandon ship. Launch the escape pods while we still can. No. Zixril slammed his fist down. I am not abandoning my ship to these primitives. But even as he said it, he knew it was pride talking. Stupid, dangerous pride. The kind that got crews killed. He looked at the main viewing screen, which somehow was still functioning. The human fleet had changed course. They were no longer following their original path. Now they were heading directly toward the 3 disabled Vextar scout ships. They know we're here, Talvik whispered. Of course they know. We lit ourselves up like beacons when we started scanning them. Zixril watched the human ships approach with a mixture of fear and fascination. Weapon status? All weapons are offline, sir. Even if they were online, I wouldn't trust them to fire in the right direction. The command deck fell silent except for the sounds of failing systems and the hum of the human ships drawing closer. Zixril had faced many dangers in his career. He had survived battles, navigated through dangerous nebulas, even escaped a pirate ambush once, but he had always been in control. Always had his ship, his weapons, his technology to rely on. Now he had nothing. He was helpless, floating in space, watching as unknown aliens approached his dying vessel. He didn't know if they were coming to help or to finish what they had started. He didn't know if he would live to see the next hour. One of the human ships broke away from the main fleet. It was smaller than the others, sleek and smooth. As it came closer, Zixril could see the hull more clearly through his failing view screen. The surface wasn't like any ship he had ever seen. It seemed to ripple and shift, covered in patterns that moved like living things. Colors flowed across it, blues and greens and silver, constantly changing. That's not possible, Talvik breathed. Those hull patterns, they're not static. They're moving, changing. How is that possible? Zixril had no answer. Everything about these humans defied his understanding. They were supposed to be primitive, new to space, harmless. Instead, they had destroyed 3 advanced Vextar scout ships without firing a single weapon. Without even seeming to try. The human ship stopped a safe distance away, and for a long moment nothing happened. Zixril watched it float there, beautiful and terrifying in its strangeness. Then every screen on his command deck suddenly came back online. Not flickering or failing, but perfectly clear and stable. Before Zixril could react to this miracle, the main view screen changed. The image of stars was replaced by a face, a human face. It was smaller than a Vextar face with only 2 eyes instead of 3, and strange thin skin instead of protective scales. Hair grew from the top of its head in a dark color. The mouth moved and words came out in perfect Vextar language, with the correct accent and pronunciation. Scout Commander Zixral of the Vextar hegemony, the human said. The voice was calm, even friendly. I am Captain Maya Chen of the United Earth Naval Forces ship Remembrance. I apologize for the condition of your vessels. It appears our security systems responded to your scanning attempt. Zixral could only stare. Security systems? Security systems had done this? He started, then stopped. What could he say? What should he say? Captain Chen smiled slightly. It wasn't a threatening expression, but it wasn't entirely comforting either. Perhaps we should talk, Commander. I think there are some things you need to understand about humans, and about what happens when you try to scan our ships without permission. The screen flickered once, then stabilized again. In that moment, Zixral realized something that chilled him to his core. This human, this Captain Chen, wasn't just able to communicate with him. She had taken control of his ship's systems, stabilized them, fixed them enough to allow communication. If she could fix them, she could break them again just as easily. Yes, Zixral said quietly, I think we should talk. Behind him, he heard Talvik whisper a prayer to the old gods. Zixral understood why. They had thought they were the hunters observing primitive prey, but they had been wrong, so very wrong. Captain Maya Chen sat in what appeared to be a command chair, though the design was nothing like the Vextar ships Zixral knew. Behind her, he could see other humans moving around, working at stations that looked more organic than technological. Everything about the human ship seemed wrong, alien in a way that went deeper than just a different design philosophy. Commander Zixral, Captain Chen said, her voice still speaking perfect Vextar. First, let me assure you that my ship is not currently threatening yours. Your systems are stabilized for communication purposes only. Once we finish this conversation, we can discuss what happens next. What did you do to my ships? Zixral demanded, trying to regain some sense of authority. What weapon did you use? Weapon? Captain Chen's face showed confusion. Commander, we didn't use any weapons. What happened to your ships was an automatic defensive response. When you began actively scanning our vessels, your scanning beams carried data about your systems, your technology, your computer architecture. Our ship's quantum networks detected this incoming information and responded the way they're designed to respond to any unauthorized access attempt. I don't understand, Zixral admitted. Captain Chen leaned forward slightly. Let me explain something about human technology, Commander. We developed our computer systems in complete isolation from the rest of the galaxy. We had no contact with other species, no knowledge of how anyone else built their technology, so we created something unique, something that works very differently from what you're used to. All technology follows certain basic principles, Talvik spoke up from his station. Physics is physics. Mathematics is mathematics. The same rules apply to everyone. That's true, Captain Chen agreed. But there are many different ways to apply those rules. Tell me, how do your computer systems process information? Talvik looked at Zixral, who nodded for him to answer. We use binary processors with quantum entanglement for faster-than-light data transfer. The standard galactic architecture that every advanced species uses. It's the most efficient system possible. For you, yes, Captain Chen said. But humans took a different path. Our quantum computers don't just process information. They exist in multiple states simultaneously, constantly collapsing and expanding possibilities. They predict what you're going to ask before you ask it. They defend against threats that haven't happened yet. And most importantly, they actively reject any attempt to interface with incompatible systems. That's insane, Zixral said. How can your computers function if they're constantly fighting each other? They're not fighting each other. They're all human-designed, so they're all compatible with each other. But when your ships tried to scan ours, your systems attempted to establish a connection, a handshake in computer terms. Our systems received that handshake attempt and recognized it as foreign, incompatible, potentially hostile. Captain Chen touched something on her chair, and a holographic display appeared between them, showing the molecular structure of something complex. This is what happened, Commander. Your scanning beam carried your system architecture in its data signature. It's automatic, built into how your sensors work. When that signature touched our hull, our quantum networks analyzed it, recognized it as incompatible, and responded by sending back corrupted code designed to isolate the threat. You sent a virus into our systems, Zixrel said. No, we sent back your own code, but altered to be incompatible with your systems. Your computers tried to process this code, tried to make sense of it, and in doing so they began rewriting themselves to accommodate the new data structure. But your hardware can't support what your software was trying to become, so your systems destroyed themselves trying to adapt. Talvik made a sound like a gasp. You weaponized incompatibility. We didn't weaponize anything, Captain Chen said, and for the first time, Zixrel heard frustration in her voice. This is just how our systems work. It's not a weapon. It's not an attack. It's an immune response, and it's the reason why humanity is currently trying to travel to the outer edges of explored space, far from established civilizations. What do you mean? Zixrel asked. Captain Chen sighed, a very human gesture that somehow conveyed exhaustion and sadness. Commander, you're not the first species to scan our ships. You're not the first to experience what happens when incompatible computer systems interact. In the 52 years since humans developed faster-than-light travel, we've had 17 first contact situations. 13 of them ended badly. Badly how? The Reltani Concorde lost their entire interstellar communication network when one of their ships responded to our hailing frequency. 17 billion people were cut off from each other for 6 months while they rebuilt everything from scratch. The core empire had a complete military infrastructure collapse when they tried to scan one of our colony ships. Their defense satellites all shut down simultaneously. For 3 days, their homeworld was completely undefended. Captain Chen's face showed genuine pain. We didn't mean to cause any of this, Commander. We were just trying to make friends, to join the galactic community. But every time we interact with another species' technology, we risk destroying it. So now we're leaving, going somewhere far away where we won't accidentally hurt anyone else. Zixrel felt his understanding of the situation shift. These humans weren't conquerors. They weren't invaders. They were refugees, fleeing from their own dangerous nature. How many of you are out here? He asked. This fleet carries 47 ships with a total population of approximately 200,000 humans. We're heading to an uninhabited star system about 6 months from here, where we'll establish a new colony, far from anyone else, far from any civilization we might accidentally destroy. But you'll keep expanding, Talvik said. Your population will grow. Eventually, you'll encounter other species again. Yes, Captain Chen admitted. That's why we're also working on something we call translation protocols. Systems that can safely interface between human and non-human technology. It's slow work, and we don't have many successes yet. But we're trying. Zixrel looked around his damaged command deck. Even stabilized by the human systems, he could see the destruction their brief contact had caused. How do we repair our ships? He asked. Can we even repair them? Yes, but not by yourselves. Not easily, anyway. Captain Chen touched her chair again, and the holographic display changed to show a schematic of a Vextar scout ship. Your systems are contaminated with human quantum signatures. If you try to reboot normally, the corruption will just spread again. We need to physically cleanse your computers, remove all traces of the incompatible code, and then rebuild your systems from clean backups. You can do this? We've done it before. We have specialized teams trained in decontamination procedures. With your permission, I can send them to your ships. They'll work quickly and carefully. Your vessels will be functional again within a few hours. Zixrel wanted to refuse. His pride screamed at him to reject this offer, to maintain some dignity. But his duty to his crew was stronger than his pride. Very well, he said. Send your teams. Thank you for trusting us, Commander. I know this isn't easy. Captain Chen stood from her chair. While my engineers work on your ships, perhaps you'd like to come aboard the Remembrance? We can talk more about protocols for future contact. I assume you'll need to report this encounter to your superiors. Yes, Zixrel said quietly. Yes, I will need to make a report. Then let's make sure you have accurate information to give them. Captain Chen's face became very serious. This is important, Commander. Your government will want to study what happened here. They'll want to understand our technology, maybe try to replicate it or defend against it. Please tell them not to try. Every species that has attempted to weaponize or reverse engineer human quantum systems has only made the incompatibility worse. The Gel Collective lost an entire research station trying to contain a single human computer core. I'll include that in my report. Zixral promised. Good. I'll send coordinates for our nearest diplomatic station. If your hegemony wants to establish proper contact with humanity, they can do it there, with proper safeguards and protocols in place. Captain Chen smiled again, but it was sad. We're not your enemy, Commander. We never wanted to be anyone's enemy. We just want to exist without accidentally destroying everyone around us. The screen went dark, and a moment later, Zixral heard sounds from the docking bay. The human teams had arrived. He stood from his command chair, feeling older and more tired than he had in years. Talvik, you have command. Cooperate with the humans fully. I'm going to meet with Captain Chen. Yes, sir, Talvik said quietly. Then, sir, what are we going to tell headquarters? Zixral looked at the stars through his view screen, thinking about the human fleet traveling to the edges of space, trying to hide from a galaxy they desperately wanted to join. The truth, he said finally. We're going to tell them the truth, and we're going to hope they listen. The interior of the human ship was nothing like what Zixral had expected. Where Vexitar vessels were all clean lines and hard angles, the remembrance seemed to flow like water frozen in motion. The walls curved smoothly, covered in the same shifting patterns he had seen on the hull. Soft lights glowed from within the walls themselves, rather than from fixtures mounted on the surface. A human waited for him at the airlock. He was tall even for his species, with dark skin and kind eyes. He wore a simple uniform in shades of blue. Commander Zixral, welcome aboard, the human said in perfect Vextar. I'm Dr. James Rodriguez, Chief Engineer. Captain Chen asked me to give you a tour while my teams work on your ships. Is that acceptable? Yes, thank you, Zixral replied. He found himself staring at the human's hands. They were so small and delicate, with 5 thin fingers instead of the Vextar's 3 thick clawed ones. How could such fragile-looking beings have built technology that destroyed his ships without trying? As they walked through the corridors, Zixral saw more humans going about their duties. They nodded politely to him, showing no fear or hostility. Some even smiled. He counted males and females, young and old, different skin colors and body types. They seemed so diverse, so individual compared to the uniform appearance of Vextar crews. Your ship is beautiful, Zixral said, meaning it, but I don't understand how it works. Everything looks alive, Dr. Rodriguez smiled. In a way it is. Our hulls are made from smart materials that respond to the ship's quantum network. The patterns you see are actually the ship thinking, processing information, communicating with itself. Every surface is a computer, every wall is a sensor. The entire vessel is one integrated system. That sounds incredibly complex and vulnerable. If one part is damaged, wouldn't the whole system fail? You'd think so, but it's actually the opposite. Because everything is connected and constantly adapting, the ship can route around damage automatically. If we lose a section, the rest of the ship compensates instantly. Dr. Rodriguez led him to a window that looked out onto space. It's called redundancy through integration. Instead of having separate backup systems that might fail, we have one system that's flexible enough to never need backups. Zixral watched his 3 scout ships floating nearby. He could see human engineers in protective suits moving around the hulls, carrying equipment. Your people are being very thorough with the repairs. We have to be. The quantum contamination spreads through any connection, even wireless signals. We need to physically isolate each contaminated component, cleanse it, and then reintegrate it carefully. Dr. Rodriguez sighed. We've gotten good at this, unfortunately. Too much practice. Captain Chen mentioned other species you've encountered. Other incidents. Yes. 17 first contacts in 52 years. 13 went badly. The engineer's voice grew quiet. I was there for 3 of them. I'll never forget the Reltani Concord incident. We thought we were just responding to a friendly greeting. Instead, we cut off 17 billion people from each other. Do you know what that's like, Commander? Knowing you've accidentally caused so much suffering? Zixral thought about it. I think I'm beginning to understand. They entered what appeared to be a common area where several humans were eating and talking. The conversation stopped when Zixral entered and he felt dozens of eyes turned toward him. But the looks weren't hostile. They were curious, cautious, even hopeful. One of the humans, a young female with red hair, stood and approached. Excuse me, Commander. I'm Lieutenant Sarah Kim. I just wanted to say I'm sorry about what happened to your ships. We never wanted to hurt anyone. Thank you, Zixril said, surprised by the apology. It was our error. We scanned you without understanding the consequences. Still, she said, it must have been frightening. And we know how it looks, like we attacked you on purpose. But we didn't, we really didn't. Other humans nodded in agreement. Zixril saw the same expression on many faces: guilt, sadness, loneliness. These people carried a burden they never asked for. Dr. Rodriguez led him away from the common area and down another corridor. I wanted to show you something, Commander. It might help you understand our situation better. They entered a large room filled with equipment Zixril didn't recognize. In the center sat a strange device that hummed softly, surrounded by what looked like isolation barriers. This is our translation buffer project, Dr. Rodriguez explained. We're trying to build a device that can safely interface between human and non-human technology. A bridge, essentially, that speaks both languages. Does it work? Sometimes. With some species. The Talric species had computer systems similar enough to ours that we were able to establish a working connection. We now have a small trading post with them, using these buffers to communicate and exchange data safely. Dr. Rodriguez touched the isolation barrier gently. But for every success, we have 3 failures. The Vextar system architecture is very different from the Talrics. It might take us years to develop a buffer that works with your technology. Years? Zixril felt a strange emotion. Was it disappointment? So we cannot communicate safely until then? We can communicate verbally, face to face. We can even establish isolated trading posts with separate non-networked systems. But our computers can never touch. Our ships can never link. We'll always be separate unless we solve this problem. The engineer looked at the device with obvious frustration. And we might never solve it, Commander. The more species we encounter, the more we realize just how isolated we really are. They continued the tour, and Dr. Rodriguez showed him more. The hydroponic gardens where humans grew their food, the medical bay with equipment designed for human biology, the engineering section where the ship's quantum core pulsed with strange light. Everything was impressive, advanced, and completely incompatible with the technology the rest of the galaxy used. Finally, they reached Captain Chen's ready room. She was waiting for them, along with Talvik, who had apparently been brought over as well. Commander, Sub-Commander, Captain Chen greeted them. Please sit. Your ships are nearly repaired. Another hour and you'll be able to return to full operation. But before you go, we need to discuss what happens next. Zixril and Talvik sat in chairs that adjusted automatically to their bodies. Captain Chen brought up a star map on a holographic display. This is human space, she said, highlighting a small region, and this is where we're going. She pointed to a distant cluster of stars far from any major civilization. We've identified 14 star systems suitable for colonization. We plan to settle them over the next 20 years, creating a network of human worlds far from anyone else. You're isolating yourselves, Talvik said. By necessity, yes. We can't risk more incidents like the ones we've caused, but we're not disappearing completely. Captain Chen highlighted another location. Here at the edge of your hegemony's space, we're establishing a diplomatic station. It will be divided into 2 sections. One with human technology, one with standard galactic technology. They'll be physically separated, with no electronic connection between them. Communication will happen through human and alien diplomats meeting in neutral chambers. That seems incredibly inefficient, Zixril observed. It is, but it's the only way we can safely interact with other species right now. Captain Chen looked at him seriously. Commander, your hegemony will need to decide how it wants to deal with us. We're offering peaceful coexistence and limited trade through proper diplomatic channels. But if your government decides we're too dangerous and tries to eliminate us, or if they try to steal our technology for weapons development, the results will be catastrophic. Is that a threat? Zixril asked carefully. No, it's a warning based on experience. The Core Empire tried to capture a human ship for study. They succeeded. They got the ship into one of their research stations, and then every computer system in that station, including life support, failed simultaneously. 300 core scientists died before they could evacuate. Captain Chen's voice was heavy with regret. We didn't build our technology to be a weapon, Commander. But in the wrong circumstances, that's exactly what it becomes. Talvik spoke up. What do you want from us, Captain? Why tell us all this? Because we need advocates, Captain Chen said simply. People who understand that we're not monsters or conquerors. We're just different. And we need the galaxy to give us space to exist without fear or suspicion. Your report to your superiors will be the first impression the Vextar hegemony has of humanity. What you say could determine whether we become trading partners or enemies. Zixral thought about everything he had seen and learned. The damaged ships, the apologetic engineers, the isolation barriers around their technology, the lonely fleet heading to the edges of space. These humans had power they didn't want and isolation they didn't choose. I will tell them the truth, he said. I will tell them that humanity is not a threat to be eliminated or a prize to be captured. I will tell them that you are a civilization trying to find your place in a galaxy that isn't built for you. Thank you, Commander, Captain Chen said quietly. That's all we can ask. An alert chimed and Dr. Rodriguez checked a device on his wrist. The repairs are complete. Your ships are ready. As they prepared to leave, Zixral turned back to Captain Chen. 3 weeks later, Zixral stood before the Hegemony High Command. The chamber was enormous, with seats rising in circles around a central platform where he stood alone. Hundreds of the most powerful beings in the hegemony watched him, their scales gleaming under the bright lights. The weight of their attention was almost physical. Grand Commander Velax, the supreme leader of the hegemony military, spoke first. His voice echoed through the chamber. Scout Commander Zixral, you have submitted a report claiming that a primitive species disabled 3 of our scout ships without firing a weapon, without even trying. Explain how this is possible. Zixral had prepared for this moment. He had spent the entire journey back reviewing his data, organizing his thoughts, practicing his words. But standing here now, facing the most powerful military force in the sector, he felt his carefully prepared speech crumble. Instead, he told them the simple truth. They didn't attack us, we attacked ourselves. He activated his datapad, and holographic images appeared above him, showing the human fleet, the system failures, the spreading corruption. When we scanned the human vessels, our systems attempted to interface with theirs, but human technology is fundamentally incompatible with ours. The contact triggered an automatic defensive response that corrupted our computers. Our ships destroyed themselves trying to process incompatible code. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Velax raised a hand for silence. You're saying we're vulnerable to any species with incompatible technology? No, sir. Every other species we've encountered uses variations of the same basic computer architecture. The humans developed their systems in complete isolation. They're unique, and they're aware of the danger they represent. Zixral showed images of Captain Chen, the diplomatic station plans, the human fleet traveling to distant stars. They're not trying to conquer anyone. They're trying to avoid causing harm. Yet they harmed you, another commander called out. We harmed ourselves, Zixral corrected firmly. They responded to our unauthorized scanning with an automatic defensive system. Once they realized what had happened, they helped us. They repaired our ships. They explained their technology. They offered diplomatic solutions for peaceful coexistence. For the next hour, Zixral answered questions. Some were skeptical, others angry, a few seemed thoughtful. He showed them everything. The conversation with Captain Chen, Dr. Rodriguez's explanations, the data about previous human encounters with other species. He held nothing back. Finally, Velax called for a recess. This council will deliberate. Commander Zixral, you are dismissed. We will summon you when we have reached a decision. Zixral left the chamber and found Talvik waiting in the hall outside. His second officer had been his constant support through all of this. How did it go? Talvik asked. I don't know. They listened. Whether they understood is another question. Zixral sat down heavily on a bench. I keep thinking about those humans, Talvik, traveling to the edge of space because they're too dangerous to live near anyone else. It's not fair. Life rarely is, Talvik said quietly. Hours passed. Zixral watched as other officers came and went, heading to and from the council chambers for private consultations. He tried to rest but couldn't. His mind kept replaying the encounter with the humans, wondering if he'd said the right things, done enough to prevent disaster. Finally, a messenger arrived. Scout Commander Zixral, the council summons you. He returned to the chamber, his heart's beating fast. The commanders sat in their seats, their expressions unreadable. Velax stood. Commander Zixral, we have reviewed your report and conducted additional research. We have confirmed that 6 other hegemony vessels have had encounters with human ships in the past 2 years. All reported similar system failures when attempting to scan or approach the humans. All were assisted by human crews after the incidents. Zixral waited, barely breathing. Furthermore, Velax continued, we have consulted with our scientific council. They confirm your assessment. Human quantum computing systems are incompatible with our technology at a fundamental level. Any attempt to interface, capture, or reverse engineer human systems would likely result in catastrophic failures across our networks. More murmurs in the chamber. Velax raised his hand again. This council has divided into 3 positions. The first faction, the isolationists, advocate for establishing a military perimeter around human space and forbidding all contact. They argue that the humans are too dangerous to allow near our civilization. Zixral's stomach sank. A military perimeter would mean war eventually. The humans would expand and the hegemony would try to contain them, and conflict would be inevitable. The second faction, the exploiters, believe we should attempt to capture and study human technology, arguing that mastering it would give us unprecedented military advantages. Even worse, that would definitely lead to war, and based on what Captain Chen had told him, probably to massive loss of life on both sides. The third faction, the adapters, propose accepting the human diplomatic offer and establishing limited contact through proper protocols. They argue for eventual technological integration, adapting our systems to be compatible with human systems over time. Velax looked directly at Zixral. Commander, you have met these humans. You have spoken with their leaders. You have seen their ships and heard their explanations. Which faction do you support? Zixral knew his answer would carry weight. He was the expert now, whether he wanted to be or not. He chose his words carefully. I support the adapters, sir. Not because I believe the humans are harmless. They're not. Their technology is incredibly dangerous to us. But they're aware of that danger and actively trying to minimize it. They're not our enemies unless we make them our enemies. He paused, then added, and sir, I believe that if we try to isolate them or exploit them, we will lose. We can't fight an enemy we can't scan, can't communicate with, can't predict. But we can coexist with them. We can learn from them. We can even, eventually, benefit from their differences. Silence fell over the chamber. Then Velax nodded slowly. That was well said, Commander. This council has reached its decision. We will accept the human diplomatic offer. We will establish contact through their proposed station. We will assign you, Commander Zixral, as our primary liaison to humanity. You will work with their Captain Chen to develop protocols for safe interaction. Relief flooded through Zixral. Thank you, sir. I won't fail you. See that you don't. But Commander, understand this clearly. We are not making this decision out of kindness or trust. We are making it because the alternatives are worse. The humans will be watched carefully. Any sign that they're more dangerous than they claim, any indication that they're using their diplomatic channels for espionage or sabotage, and this decision will be reversed immediately. I understand, sir. You're dismissed. Report to the Diplomatic Corps for your new assignment. As Zixral left the chamber for the second time, he felt Talvik fall into step beside him. Congratulations on your promotion, sir. Or is it a demotion? I can't quite tell. Zixral laughed, surprising himself. Neither can I, but at least we prevented a war. For now, Talvik said. But you know the exploiters won't give up. They'll keep pushing for access to human technology. I know. That's why we need to make this diplomatic relationship work. Show everyone that cooperation is better than conflict. Zixral looked out a window at the stars. Besides, the humans gave me coordinates for their diplomatic station. I'm supposed to meet Captain Chen there in 2 months to begin establishing protocols. Are you worried? Terrified, Zixral admitted, but also curious, excited maybe. We're entering completely new territory here, Talvik. Nobody knows how this will turn out. That's what scares me, his friend said. 2 months passed quickly. Zixril spent the time studying everything he could about humans and preparing for his new role. When the day finally came to travel to the diplomatic station, he felt as ready as he would ever be. The station was exactly as Captain Chen had described. 2 separate sections connected by a central neutral zone. One side gleamed with human technology, all flowing curves and shifting patterns. The other side was built with standard galactic architecture, familiar and comfortable. Zixril docked on the galactic side and made his way to the neutral zone. It was a simple room with chairs, tables, and a clear barrier separating it from the human side. Captain Chen was already there, waiting. She smiled when she saw him. "Commander Zixril, welcome. I'm glad you came." "Captain Chen, thank you for agreeing to work with us." He sat down across from her, a physical barrier between them but nothing blocking their words. "I have to admit I wasn't sure this would happen. My government was not unanimous in their decision." "Neither was mine," Captain Chen said. "There are many humans who think we should just hide, avoid all contact with other species. They're tired of apologizing for what we are. But I believe isolation isn't the answer. We need to find a way to be part of the galaxy, not apart from it." "Then we share the same goal," Zixril said. "How do we begin?" "Carefully," Captain Chen replied. "Very carefully. We'll start with simple exchanges of information, cultural data, scientific knowledge that doesn't involve computer systems, historical records. We'll develop protocols for safe communication.